Morning everyone, welcome to what used to be called MRTB, which reads the Bible, but now is called RT, reading the RTBM. Reading, reading, reading the Bible with me. I had to figure out that acronym in my head. We're in Mark's Gospel. We're going to read verses 9 to 13 this morning. Let me read it to you. At that time, Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee. Now, we'll just pause there for a little moment. If you've seen my last two videos, you would know that the first chapter of Mark's Gospel, and particularly the first bit, is trying to make this point that Jesus is better than, he is greater than. Like, it started with Jesus is greater than Caesar, because it says this is the good news about Jesus the Messiah, the Son of God. A line that was used about Caesar. So Mark is trying to tell you, Jesus is even greater than Caesar, who's brought peace to the whole entire known world. And then the next bit, we hear about John the Baptist, who later on is called the greatest person who's ever been born of a woman, like the greatest human being who has ever lived. And we hear John saying, that he's not even worthy to stoop down and tie the Messiah's shoes or the Christ's shoes. But here, we learn something very, very interesting about Jesus. He has come from Nazareth in Galilee. Later on in the Gospels, some of the disciples are going to ask a question. They're going to say, hang on a second, has anything good ever come out of Nazareth, Galilee? This is this backwater kind of hick town. One thing that people knew back then, and even we know now, is important people come from important places. They're born to important people. They come from the cities. They come from the centers of culture. It's really important that you're born in the right kind of place in this world and even in our world, because important people come from important places. But Jesus, he's coming from Nazareth in Galilee. He's coming from Hicksville. He's coming from, what examples? Metford. He's coming from, Swansea. He's coming from Whitebridge. He's coming just from a regular place. He's born to this regular family. Let me go on. He was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as Jesus was coming out of the water, we saw heaven being opened, and the Spirit descending on him like a dove, and a voice came from heaven saying, "You are my Son, whom I love, in whom I am well pleased." So this regular carpenter's son from Nazareth is revealed in this moment to be the very Son of God himself. Now that word Son of God, that comes up in the Old Testament all the time. The Son of God, or the children of God, is said to be Israel. And if you notice here, straight after we reveal that Jesus is the Son, we learn this in verse 12. At once the Spirit led him out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness fasting for 40 days and being tempted by Satan. So in the Old Testament, you hear about God's Son, the Israelites, the collective people of Israelites. And what happens to the Israelites? Well, after they leave Egypt, they are in the wilderness for how long? Well, not 40 days, but for 40 years. We hear that he's tested in the wilderness by Satan, and he was with the wild animals, and the angels tempted him. What you're getting here is this picture, I think again, of Jesus, this guy from Galilee, being even greater than the collective wisdom of Israel. This is God's Son. And just as Israel were in the wilderness being tempted for 40 days, when they were in there, they were tempted and they grumbled and they complained and they wished they could go back to Egypt. They turned their back on God, but Jesus does not. He is tempted for 40 days directly by Satan. But he does not give in to that temptation. So we're learning this lesson that Jesus is even greater than the combined wisdom of the Israelites. He's greater than all of the Israelite characters and the Israelites themselves. He is God's Son, and he is going to do it right. He's not going to give in to temptation. And he, my friends, is going to be the one in whom the blessings to Abraham are fulfilled. The blessings to Abraham is land and blessing and greatness, and that they will be a blessing to all people. So in this story, we're actually starting to see that the blessing to all people isn't going to come through Israel. Well, it is, but it's going to come at the hands of Jesus the Messiah, not of the people themselves. So even though this guy's from Nazareth in Galilee, he is God's son, and he is doing Israel right.